Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out Comes the Sun podcast radio show with my delightful co-host, Melissa Yamaguchi, and myself, Mariel Hemingway. Today, we have started on this incredible summer. Summer. I mean, we haven't started. I mean, I guess we're full-fledged.
We're in it.
Summer now. We are in it. We are in it to win it, I hope. But a lot of people are suffering under that, right? Like apparently there's a lot of issues with hot summer stuff going on.
I mean, incredible, insufferable heats. All Europe is experiencing an incredible heat wave. Humidity, high humidities. The East Coast of our tender United States is experiencing raging flooding. People are losing their gardens and their lands. And yeah, it's like, I mean, uprooting trees. I mean, trees that have been around for 25, 50 years, the trees are being so uprooted because the soil, the ground is so moist.
You have to ask yourself when things like this are happening, when extreme weather is going on, right? Because we had an extraordinary winter, right? There was so much moisture. There was so much snow here in Idaho. There was so much rain in California. Mm-hmm. You know, we came out of a drought for years. Yeah. We came out of a drought in Idaho, and now the East Coast is being inundated with this heat. And I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, I wonder because it was such a cold spring here, whether we were going to have a massively, hot summer." It's pretty normal here in Idaho, but across the nation, I always wonder, like people that say, "Oh, the global warming thing doesn't happen," but you have to wonder if there is just, we have not treated this Mother Earth terribly well for many, many decades. And it might be just that she's had it with us. She's like, I'm up to do that.
I mean, I recently read about, a recent gathering, if you will, of people who were discussing different political topics. And we are not a political show, so I'm not going to venture too far into it. And I won't name names, but I will share with you some of the stuff that came out of the meeting where a group of people were asking questions of a potential candidate running for an office. And in this seemingly benign, innocent question being asked, someone in the audience stood up and said, "I don't believe in climate change. It's a hoax." And another person said, "You're an idiot." And these two men, right, not the candidate on stage and not the journalist asking, but these two men in the audience started going at each other and became so volatile and vicious in their language. Nothing was physical, except for the gentleman who indicated that he didn't believe in climate change, that it was all a hoax, took the microphone and released an unpleasant amount of flatulence into the microphone for the entire and that's what I think about climate change. So I tell you this story to highlight that this is a very hot topic for some people who will lose all sense of decorum in the fight for what they believe to be accurate about this. So far be it from me to try to change anyone's mind. However,
I agree.
When we're looking at, in my humble, honest opinion, when you're looking at some of the scientific knowledge and acknowledgement of the shift of our planet, you have to think, okay, well, where do we draw the line with what we do believe in science and what we don't believe in science for those who don't question it? So if you look at this and you believe it, then it holds merit that there's a shift changing, and we as humans are propelling that shift faster than the environment is.
Well, when the icebergs are melting and things, it's just happening, and that's a reality.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's not climate change. Maybe that's just the Earth going through what the Earth goes through in cycles. That could be it too. But there is this kind of, I choose to believe in science when it's convenient for me.
Yep.
I don't choose to believe in science when I don't like it, when I don't like what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
sounds like an argument with my husband. When he doesn't believe when he doesn't like what I'm saying, he argues with me. Yeah.
Right. I know. I mean, I guess there's, and as human beings, we're in this place, you and me as friends, the wonderful thing about our friendship is that we get to talk about whatever it is that's on our minds, right? We have this ability to say, well, I don't really think that way, or I strongly believe this. And yet I'm very open to your opinion. You're very open to mine. And I think that that's where, like, even when it comes to climate change, when it comes to science, it comes to the weather, whatever it is, we have to be willing to have a discussion about it. And, we've talked about this before, but this idea that we can't have conversation about things that we're curious about is,
I know,
it's just a weird world we've developed. We're not allowed to say what's on our mind because that puts us in a camp.
well,
And I really dislike that.
And I'm okay with somebody having a different opinion of me. I don't really care.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had lunch with the two women, and one of them was very comfortable in speaking up, disagreeing with me on something. She goes, "No, I don't agree at all, Melissa." And I wasn't taken aback. My mouth wasn't open. And how dare you? I didn't feel that. All I thought was, "Oh, good. She's going to challenge me a little bit." All right. And so I even told her the following day by text that I welcomed. It wasn't discord. It was a difference of opinion, and I didn't have to agree with her, and I knew she didn't need to. But if I was saying the sky's a beautiful baby blue, if she would have said, "I disagree with you. I think it's a really, from my perspective, it's royal blue," she's not wrong. It's for her perspective. So I didn't need her to see it the way I did, and I think that I found that lunch to be so delightful as a result.
Well, don't you think? And you've told me about this lunch, which is so wonderful. Don't you think it's also the fact that they come from a different generation, an older generation?
Yes, an older generation,
older women, right? Yep. Who have grown up in and had decades of different time, right? And we are in a decade where the youth, or the really young, are programmed to believe that you have to stay in a certain lane.
Yes.
And not have discussion about things. Otherwise, now we're in this cancel culture. If you discuss something that might be controversial, excuse me, then all of a sudden you're in that camp. And that's not the generation we come from. We come from, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and it was all about like rebellion and this.
Yeah.
And I was very young at the time, but still, there was a sense of like, I'm grasping to try to figure out what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
One thing I love about you as a parent, like I always notice how your children, and I can't call them children because they're young adults now, but they're so curious, and you've encouraged them to be very open-minded about the conversation. And I just think that that's incredibly important.
I think it is too. And thank you for saying that. And I'll tell you something, a little bit of that canceling is starting to backfire just a little bit. Starting to backfire, even amongst the people who were promoting it. And, I don't like what you say, therefore I'm canceling you. And then we in the media became so fearful. And I think that when I met with these two friends of mine, one of them was saying, "Well, I don't agree with this." And she was telling me why. But you know what? It's okay to not like what somebody says. It's okay to turn off your TV if you don't want to see the ad. It's okay to not want to support someone if he or she was recently found guilty of doing some heinous crime. What's not okay is to dredge up people's past from 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago when they've tried to make amends, or because then what we're saying as a people, that we don't believe in the power of
changing,
and rehabilitation.
Well,
and
that's a very, very interesting point, because socially we don't want to allow it, and yet all the programs of people. Let's talk about addiction, because this is a show about mental health. You talk about addiction. The whole idea behind addiction is that you say, look, the world is your oyster, and you get to. Right? And we're not going to hold you to all the things that you did in the past,
That's right.
You apologize for them or whatever it is.
That's
but
right.
Moving forward, we accept that you can change. But if we don't allow people to change, and we're such a, for the most part, Christian based, religiously, and I'm not talking about religion, but the whole idea is about forgiveness, right? It's allowing people to come to a place where, okay, I did these things, I got this thing, and I need to work it out, but I need to move forward. And there's many people that have had addictions, have had terrible, been, done some terrible things in their past, but have become really wonderful citizens of the world, right?
Well, and Mariel,
and they should be able to.
Well, what does it do to your mental health if you think you're never forgiven for your past sins? Now, listen, I'm not speaking of the criminally insane who have done horrific things to children, so I don't want anyone coming at me on the show.
No.
I'm not talking about horrific things. I'm talking about, anyway, I don't want to get into it because I don't want to be pinpointed. I'm just saying, staying on the subject of addiction, alcoholism, drug use, when someone has made a mistake and he or she is working to get ahead of that, part of their mental wellness program is realizing that there's room for forgiveness, not only for them to forgive themselves, but for others to allow them to grow and forgive also.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, this is a great discussion, one that we'll probably have again and again. Because I'm terribly I'm just interested in it because I want to be able to talk about things. I come from that generation, and I think by discussion we come to conclusions and we come to recovery or whatever it is. Anyway, moving on. If you're just tuned in to us, you're listening to Out Comes the Sun Radio with Melissa Yamaguchi and myself, Mariel Hemingway. And don't go away because we have a wonderful guest. Well, the guest is a subject, but it's a guest. It's a guest book, but not a guest book, really.
You look marvelous.
As a mental health advocate and author, I love books. Books have the capacity to inspire, educate, transform, and ultimately help readers all over the world. So if you want to publish your book, or if you need help writing your story, I highly recommend Mindstir Media, rated the #1 best book publisher around the country. Mindstir Media can help you no matter where you are in the book writing or publishing process. Go to mindstirmedia.com to learn more and schedule a consultation. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Out Comes the Sun Radio. And I'm excited today to talk about a book because you know that I have a book club. It's called the Mariel Hemingway Book Club. But also, I just love to talk about books because I think books are so important. I think that it's just a shame that we don't read as much as we used to. But you, Melissa, my co-host, amazing co-host, Melissa Yamaguchi, have a friend who wrote a really interesting book that I find fascinating. I find it fascinating because I think it's so relatable. It's such a relatable. So please tell us a little bit about this book because I love it. And also she's your friend. So I'd like to hear from you.
So the book is written by Marianne Dougherty, and she's an original Pennsylvanian who has transplanted out to Santa Barbara. And I've known Marianne for 28 years. And she's always been a magazine editor. She's always done a lot of, in magazines, it's quick writing, right? Well, she's been working on this novel and she completed it. And I've learned about these characters. When I would meet with her for lunch, she talks about them as though she's telling me about a family reunion she just got back from. And I would have to say, who is this now? And it was a character. They were so alive for her. But she has her book out, and you can get it on Amazon. It's called What We Remember. Great title. And the premise of it is something that I think you and I as friends will find intriguing. It's the premise of these 4 women who have been friends through childhood and or college age. And it shows the metamorphosis of their friendship throughout the years, whether it's during marriage or childbirth or the loss of someone or divorce or cancer or whatever the issue is, showing how even though they've changed and life changed for them, this core fabric of friendship was able to keep them tied together. And you and I both know how hard that is.
Yes.
It's hard.
It absolutely is hard. And it's beautifully written too. And let's just say that, we both have an admiration for anybody who can actually put sentences together
Yes.
with fluidity, and like it's almost lyrical in their ability to transpose, to tell you a story in a way that makes you smile and makes you think, I really like that. So it's a wonderful story, because I think we are curious about those relationships that we've had for a really long time, and whether they stand the test of time, right? The test of our changes, and what friends that, I know what's curious about our friendship is that it happened so late in life, and yet it's such a bonding experience. And yet I know that I have friends from a long time ago that are still dear to me. And there's certain aspects of that friendship that don't translate as well now. And then other aspects that are still there, but they're kind of implanted in the past.
Yep.
That relationship to those people is it's based on something childhood-like in a funny way. Ours is funny because it's such a combination of different things, but I just love this. I love this book. I love this book because it really does explore friendship from the different generations and different changes, not generations.
But how about the title, What We Remember? So what we remember about our lives is often what we choose to remember, until someone from our life goes, oh, no, it wasn't like that. Remember, it was like this, or whatever that is. I remember when my mom and dad divorced, and they now, many years later, they've maintained a friendship. Excuse me. And the reason they've been able to maintain that is because they knew each other when. So a lot of their siblings have passed away. Their parents have passed away. A lot of their friends passed away. They came from a nearby small towns. So a lot of the people that they both knew are gone. And so I had someone ask me at one point, how your parents are still friends even after the divorce? And I said, well, they have 3 children and like 7 grandchildren and 3 great grandchildren together. Yes, they're still friends. But if you'll think about it, my dad is one of the last people alive who knew my mother before she was a mom, before she was, when she was still a young woman. And so what we remember for my parents is they hold each other true to that point in time. When you take you have a board and you see like those crime scenes where they'll put a pin in the middle, they take a red string and draw it to the next area when they're trying to map out like the crime scene. Well, if the center point that you take that red string is, if that's your center point, my dad and mom hold that for each other, because they've been, even though they're divorced, they're still friends. They hold that center point of what we remember.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's
well, it's interesting. Even thinking about none of your parents have passed, but my parents have passed. So my memory of my parents is our memories. Not my memories, but I envision my parents as the people they were when I was growing up. Yes. So they were young people. They were younger than I am now. They were in their 40s and 50s when I was growing up, right? And so that's how I remember my parents. Even when I have memories that are of later in life, I remember them from when they were younger, because that was the most impact they probably had. And that it's so interesting how our imagination is so impactful, that what we imagine is the reality that it becomes in our brain. Our brain really, our imagination becomes the reality with which you create from, right?
Yeah.
So it's why we're so I love this, because we are so powerful as human beings that we can create a reality in our brains that can change the way that we think.
Yeah.
And by changing the way that we think, we can actually change physicality, problems in our physical bodies. If we have diseases, if we can change that thinking through having an imagination of what you would like to see. So you're actually seeing it in the brain. Your brain is understanding that as reality. And the more you think those thoughts and create that imaginary vision, whatever it is, and you keep thinking it, keep thinking it, keep thinking it, you can actually create it as a reality. That's what manifestation is. It's not some mystical, I think that it's that the brain has the ability to recreate your reality by thinking the thought that you want to have happen over and over and over and over again. I find it fascinating. So this book reminds me that, I don't know, and everything is perspective when you look back on history, right?
Well, and
it's
also that manifesting within reason, right? Because I can think from here till doomsday that I'm going to look like Grace Kelly and be married to, well, my husband, if I'm attracted to him, but it's not going to happen. But yes, to your point, you said something in the beginning when we were talking about how we're not reading as much. And I wanted to mention, I read something recently. I read something about us not reading that said that our attention span is waning at a rapid rate because of our reliance upon technology, iPads, iPhones, whatever it is. So people's attention spans to be able to read the tomes of yesteryear, where they can stay with a 300-page chapter or whatever it is really, our authors are struggling to maintain their audience's attention. And it's the brain, to your point that you just made, is a muscle, and we got to train it to stay on the book, because when I talk to my clients about reading, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, Melissa, I fall asleep after 2 chapters, or I can't even get a full chapter out. I fall asleep." That's because the brain's exhausted.
Yeah. Well, that's so, and that's an interesting thing because it is a muscle. So I used to have a horrible problem as a child in school. Books put me to sleep within 5 minutes. I would get so tired. But now, when I think about it now, as a child, I was dealing with a tremendous amount of stress. My mother had cancer. I was caregiving. I was cleaning house. I was doing whatever I was doing because stupidly I thought that was my job. But whatever, you love your family. But that exhaustion was because I was exhausted, and my brain was so overwrought with stress that I couldn't handle it. And my brain just, like, taking in more information, even though I was young, I couldn't do it, and I couldn't retain it until I was out of stress. It's so interesting that you say that, because when I then moved to New York, I was 16 years old. I moved to New York. I started reading like crazy, but I no longer had the responsibility of caring for my mother or whatever that stress was. The stress level had gone away. So I became voracious, a voracious reader, and was retaining it. And now, I mean, I'm actually discovering this in this conversation. I realized the reason why I could retain after that is because the stress level wasn't there. So stress is like, and I talk about this in tips and stuff like that. Stress is such a big issue for at this point in time. When we talk about the blue zones and people that live a long time, so many of them live a long time because their stress levels are low. Because you'll often hear that they smoke cigarettes and eat, sugar constantly or whatever. No, I don't recommend that, especially if you're under stress, but their stress levels are low so that they can get away with that. And, it's just, it's a tough world we live in. So you really have to monitor your life so you can try to monitor that stress that's coming.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. And the thing about reading, the reason reading is so beautiful for you on with stress in your life is it allows you escape. It allows you, as you're reading about the streets of Laredo, you're reading about the change of the color of the leaves in New England, you're reading about some faraway place, whatever you're reading, your mind is taking you there. And you've talked about this, and we've had a guest talk about the fact that your mind can't sometimes decipher, between if it's really happening, or if are you really there. So as you're reading about something exciting, and we were on the boat, and the whole flight, whatever, your heart begins to getting excited, and it takes you there. It allows you to escape from your rote movements of getting up at 8, drinking your coffee, eating your breakfast, going to work, coming home, watering the plants, whatever it is we do on a day-to-day basis. It offers you a break. So I know that the Mariel Hemingway Book Club, our goal here with you and your club that you have is to really highlight this craft of writing in honor of your work that you've done, certainly your grandfather's work, this Hemingway work, is really honoring the craft of writing. So if we have authors who are taking their time to share with us their craft, then let's exercise our brains a little bit more. And what we remember might be one you want to add to your list, because it is talking about the value of friendship.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I highly recommend it. And you're so right. It's just like activating that imagination. And how crazy is it that we not only do we activate the imagination, then all of a sudden it touches the emotion. And then, yeah. I mean, everybody out there has read a book that like you're in tears, or your heart's racing because you're chasing something. But when you allow your brain to create the scenario, somehow it's even more palpable than looking at it on a screen. And I'm a big lover of the screen. I love seeing things, but when the imagination is the screen, really powerful. It's really powerful. And I do think that it exercises, quote unquote, the brain in a way that keeps your brain cells active and vital.
Absolutely.
Alive.
And I'll tell you something, for those that are dyslexic, the books on tape offer that same value.
Yes.
My husband is dyslexic.
I do a ton of driving, as does Billy. I know your husband does as well. And books on tapes are powerful. They're so amazing. And it activates the same thing. I drive to Idaho a lot, so I listen to a lot of books, and I do hiking as well. I love it. I love it all. I love taking it in however you're supposed to take it in. I have a friend who listens to an Audible book, but also reads it at the same time, not at the very same time, but he listens while he's walking or whatever. And then he goes home and he reads it too. I don't know.
What I was going to say about Billy is that because of his dyslexia, he did not have access to a lot of books before.
Yeah.
And he told me that once he got them on tape, he came home one day, we'd been dating at this time, and he got some book on tape, and he became ravenous. He said, "Give me a list of all these authors." And he said, I said, What are you doing? He said, "I'm going to buy this one. I'm getting this book." This was at the time that it wasn't on your phone, you could download it. He would go to the actual bookstore and buy the book on the tape and play it in the cassette of his car. And he was like a little kid who'd gone to Disneyland for the first time and just saw Mickey Mouse. He could not believe that this was this world that was out there he'd known nothing about. And he said, a whole new world has opened up for me. Well, that's what books do for me, because I love to read. But watching my husband as a young man at 27, 28 years old, it was like someone had finally turned on a light. And so I know what books can do. I've witnessed it in a grown-ups, watching it through him, and certainly my children.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so exciting. It's so great. Well, thank you everyone for listening to our conversation about books today. Yes, check out What We Remember. And what is our author's name?
Marianne Dougherty.
Marianne Dougherty, What We Remember. Beautiful book. Really beautiful book. So check that out. And we'll have another book very soon, and one to add to the Mariel Hemingway Book Club, which is always exciting. And don't go away, because we will come back and we'll have a tip from Melissa Yamaguchi about energy.
Hi there, this is John Sane, best-selling author, futurist, and strategist. And my research is taking us right into the heart of the biggest challenge we are all experiencing. How do we thrive as human beings in the age of AI? Join me in the interviews where I'll be taking you through the tools that we need to be applying to ourselves, our children, and our organizations. You're listening to Out Comes the Sun with Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi.
Welcome back to Out Comes the Sun with Mariel Hemingway and me, Melissa Yamaguchi. I want to share with you some feng shui tips about death. Now, I've spoken before about grief and I've spoken about clearing your space, but there are some very specific things to do when you've experienced a death of someone with whom you live. So the first thing that we do, even if the person passed away in a hospital, regardless of where he or she passed away, the first thing you do when you're working on the feng shui of your home is to open all the windows. You open the windows to clear the air, to let new air in. This is similar to the process of dealing with grief, but it's really about moving the air immediately. If the person did pass away in your home, then you must, in feng shui, we wash everything in the room. We even clean the walls, we clean everything, and we're not erasing the person. We are, in feng shui, it's seen as allowing them to leave, allowing the person to leave. We remove his or her clothing. Now, some people have different timelines for this because they want to hold on to it a little bit longer. But in the concept of feng shui, studying energy, it's about allowing your loved one to move on. There's an energetic blessing by saying, I love you, I had you here, now I'm blessing you to go to wherever you believe the person leaves, travels to. So remove their clothing, and certainly you're encouraged to hold on to some items that are most precious and dear to you, but do remove the clothing. We sweep the entire home. We do a quick vacuum and a sweep of the entire home to, again, cleanse the energy and to start fresh. Then there's a few things that we do that are very, very common in a lot of indigenous cultures. So I'll share this. We did this as a child when I was in Oklahoma also, but in feng shui, we use salt. So we bring salt as a cleanser. It's a sterilizer. So we can sprinkle the corners of the home with salt, and you don't have to leave it there. Certainly you can reverse that pattern and bring the salt in, and after a day of 24 hours of salt, you can then bring in the sweeping or the vacuuming. We also burn incense. So after we've cleaned and cleansed the entire home and said our prayers and wished our loved one on, to thank them for their time with us, that we were so lucky and blessed to have them in our lives for when we did, then we allow them to, we bless them for the next journey. Then we burn incense. The incense that is used most frequently in feng shui is sandalwood incense because it has a sweetness to it. It has sort of a spiritual scent to it. It's if you smelled burning sandalwood, it's kind of a calming scent. So we burn this throughout the house, and you can certainly leave the windows open while you're doing it if you don't want to keep the smell. Some people will use sage because they think it cleanses. Sage is often used though in feng shui to remove toxic energy. So if there was something that you felt heavy or bad about, then certainly sage would work. But if you are blessing a loved one to move on and it was a natural passing, then burning incense is a feng shui tip that we use. That's my tip for today around the concept of death in your home and in your life. So stay tuned, don't go too far. Coming up next for a tip on balance is Mariel Hemingway.
Hello, and welcome back to Out Comes the Sun Radio. You are listening to Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi, and I'm going to give you a little tip on balance. I want to talk about meditation today, and people often ask me, oh, how do you meditate? What do you do? How does it work? And look, there's no magic solution to meditation, right? There's no magic way of doing it that's going to instantly make you become a Buddhist monk or a Tibetan monk, or that you're going to all of a sudden have no thoughts. I think there's a misnomer about meditation that once you start meditating, you'll eventually get into this place where you're going to have no thoughts. Well, I've been meditating for 30 plus years, and I have yet to have a no thought situation happen to me. I wish it were the case, but basically meditation is a time that you disconnect from technology for the most part. Now, that being said, there are apps that will give you some guided meditations. That's often very, very helpful for somebody starting out meditation, to be guided with the sounds of water or wind or something in nature, or the sound of waves, lapping up against the beach. It's very helpful to help you to get into a calm place. And why do you want to get into this calm place? Because it disengages the stress, kind of the stress reaction to our lives. And when we are disengaged from that fight or flight, it's very helpful for our health, mental and physical health. So meditation is so beneficial on so many different levels. It just helps with bringing you to a sense of peace. And don't worry if you have to start out with 2 minutes. I often say to people, look, if you've never meditated before, start with 2 minutes. You can handle it. I promise you. 2 minutes is not going to kill you. And then after you started with your 2 minutes, you're going to add a couple minutes a week until finally you're up to 20. Say you never get past 20 minutes, but if you meditated, and meaning you took time to be still, present, and aware of your breath and aware of your body sitting in a seated position, or maybe you're lying on your back, as long as you're not going to just instantly fall asleep. But you're doing this with an awareness of your body in space, in time, and you're not stressing, right? And let me tell you something about stressful thoughts. Stressful thoughts will come. What you do when those stressful thoughts come up is you say, this is important. I will remember this. Because if it's really important, trust me, you're going to remember it in the 5 minutes that you're spending in stillness. And if you stick with that stillness past those, aggravating thoughts that you think you need to address immediately, you will find that when you address them after you come out of stillness meditation, or even just call it quiet time, or prayer, if that's how you speak to yourself. But if you wait, you will come at that problem from a totally different perspective, because it changes the way you feel. Because if you've taken the time to be still and quiet inside yourself, you address problems differently, because you're coming from a place of calm. And when you come at problems or issues from a place of calm, you address them in a way that comes up with actual solutions rather than panic solutions. You're not in fight or flight. So meditation has so many benefits, and the physical benefits are profound. Even so much to say that people who suffer from diseases and things that are very, very serious, creating a meditation practice for yourself where you visualize your wellness, you visualize your physical body becoming healthy and repairing, and you visualize your cells being strong. And, if you have a low red blood cell count, you visualize those red blood cells coming to the rescue, right? Whatever it is that you need, you have the ability in that, quote unquote meditation, whatever you want to call it, that still time for you to really change things, even if it just means you're going to come at any issue in your life with a sense of peace, calm, and addressing it from a place where you're in control of the narrative, right? And that's what I think that meditation does. It enables you to turn things around so that you're not a reactor, you're a responder. And what I mean by that is we react to things when we go, and you don't take a moment to take a breath before you lash out at something. Response is when you take a breath and a pause and you respond to something. And that's what meditation teaches you to do. It teaches you to be a responder. It teaches you to see things from a perspective that nothing can take you down. Like it's all just energy moving. And what perfect thing. You listen to Melissa's amazing, tips on energy, and you realize that we're all energy. And when you meditate, you can actually feel energy. When you take time to be still, you can actually feel energy. When you do it long enough, you can feel the energy moving through your body. You can feel it like waves. And it's just about paying attention. It's not magic. It's not mystery. It's just once you've calmed your nervous system down enough, you start to be able to feel internally how you feel. And I think that that's one of the great benefits, is that it slows you down enough to feel yourself, to feel how you work on the inside out. So to me, it's been one of the greatest things in my life to learn. I learned it many, many years ago. I learned it through doing yoga. And I used to do a crazy practice of yoga that was so athletic, basically, for lack of a better term. It was a very athletic kind of yoga, because I was so I needed to physically get that energy out so that I could sit still in meditation. And when I would do the physical, I would be so at ease in the stillness, in sitting in stillness, in sitting in meditation. And that's how I learned how to do it. I actually had to be physical in order to calm down, so that my brain could calm down. And now it's just a tool, but I don't even call it a tool. It's a joy for me every day that I wake up in the morning and I think of gratitude. And when I'm sitting in meditation, it's just this time where I know I'm blanketed in peace, blanketed in calm. And I know that I was taught self-love by meditation. And as goofy and maybe woo-woo as that sounds, it really isn't. It's very important for us to love ourselves, because truly the only person that can really love you, as the Miley Cyrus song says, I can give myself flowers. I can love me better than you can. And that's kind of true. And it's not a judgment of anybody else's love for us, but the true love comes from within. And so that's my tip for today. Love yourself and start meditating, maybe a little bit.
I like the adding on a minute a week. I like that, because it's obtainable. And some people think, oh my gosh, I can't. How do you? I got all these thoughts. I like the baby step, because everybody can feel like they're winning. People don't feel like they're losing. Yeah, I like that tip.
Yeah, it's because it can be challenging, right? It can be challenging if you see it as challenging, but 2 minutes isn't that challenging, right? I mean, that's not, all right, I can sit here for 2 minutes. Like, how often here's a good place to do it. When you're on a plane and you just heard that you were delayed for 25 minutes. And at first it's so annoying and you're like, oh, and then I always say to myself, oh, wait, perfect time to meditate. And I start out just like everybody else. I'm a little agitated. I'm still listening with half an ear to, whether they're going to say that we're going to leave the gate or whatever it is. And yet that time that you take to just kind of, all right, come back to myself. I can't change this situation, but it's a great way that when you're a captive audience, and you're literally a captive audience, to practice meditation. It's a good place to start.
That's smart. Fasting and meditating all on the plane.
Yeah, there you go. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, everybody. What an interesting show. I think for me, I learned a lot. Thank you, Melissa, for sharing all, I don't know, your insights into living life and friendships and, gosh, the brain, the imagination, and how much books can fill up our lives. And I hope everyone, I don't know, takes away something glorious from this little bit of time we had together. And it's so great that you're here and you're listening to Out Comes the Sun podcast. And again, I will always say it, please check out marielhemingwayfoundation.org and check out how you can help us become a resource navigator so that we can bring solutions for mental health to everybody in this country, whether they need holistic help or psychiatric help or medicinal help or pharmaceutical help, whatever it is. We just want to be able to guide people towards their solution, because there is a solution for everyone. So thank you so much for listening to Outcomes of Sun. We will see you again soon.